I want to thank our hosts, Safe and Sound, and their executive director, Bridget Whitaker, and the staff behind me, and other community partners who will be joining us soon. Today we are here to talk about a multifaceted approach to solving a multifaceted challenge that is reckless driving. And in our district, in the 17th Assembly District, we did a survey, and we got 500 responses. And in half of those responses, people listed public safety as their highest challenge. And in about 20–25% of those additional responses, people said reckless driving was a challenge. And so we're here, as I stated, this is a multifaceted approach. We're here to talk about the 5 E's, the 6 E's really, but the 5 E's are enforcement, education, evaluation, encouragement, equity, and engineering. And we're talking about that last E today specifically, which is engineering, which is why we are introducing a bill that would allocate $60 million in general purpose revenue from the state of Wisconsin to traffic calming grants, where municipalities and also tribal nations could come to the state of Wisconsin so that they could have the dollars to engineer and take that approach to solving the challenge that is reckless driving. It's something that Milwaukee, the city of Milwaukee asked for in the budget, something that Milwaukee County asked for in the budget. The governor placed it in his budget, however, it was summarily removed by the Joint Finance Committee. So we are taking another crack at it today. We're going to be introducing this bill, and it will emerge soon after we're done here. And it's a great approach. Like I said, this is a multifaceted approach. We have all the E's together, and we need to utilize them as much as possible. And with that, I want to invite my colleague, who is also a member of the Joint Finance Committee, my state senator, LaTanya Johnson.
Good morning. And thank you, Representative Moore Amakunde, and thank you to all of our partners and the press for being here today. Everyone living here in Milwaukee knows that reckless driving is a public safety crisis. We went out and we surveyed my district. Number 1 issue facing our district, the 6th Senate District, was gun violence. Number 2, reckless driving. Number 3 was affordability. So families worry about letting their children wait at the bus stop. Senior citizens worry about crossing the streets and driving to doctor's appointments. Our public works employees worry about doing their jobs because at any point, a speeding driver may spin out of control, blow through a stop sign, or clip the curb. And in an instant, an everyday errand is overtaken by life-changing consequences. This is a story that's all too familiar in the city of Milwaukee, but no one could grow rarer if this legislation were adopted. So we know that in 2024, there were 24.6 thousand crashes in Milwaukee County, resulting in 84 deaths and 460 serious injuries. Because traffic calming saves lives, it's plain and it's simple. We need to make sure that our infrastructure reflects the need of our constituents, and that is to save as many lives as possible by making our streets and our communities safer. We know the designs that work, that curb extensions, raised sidewalks, pedestrian islands, mini roundabouts, harder center lines, speed bumps. These are all designed to slow the flow of traffic and to protect people. And this bill would make sure that the majority of those things were possible by empowering our communities to design and build the projects we know that better serve the community needs, their neighborhoods, but most importantly, keep our communities safe. So, installing curb extensions in New York City resulted in 17% fewer pedestrian injuries. Another thing that we know is that right here in the city of Milwaukee, in 2023, Milwaukee had the most reckless driving citations on record. Reckless driving citations with speeding resulted in 14,580 citations. And I'll repeat that again. In 2023, reckless driving citations issued with speeding came out to 14,580 citations. So we know that police officers are out doing their jobs. They're making sure that they're going after the individuals who are causing our streets to be unsafe, which is extremely important. But we also know that in 2024, we saw a 5% decline in citations. Though it's unlikely because there weren't any reckless drivers, it's more likely because of the mechanisms that we put in place, such as the curb extensions, the raised crosswalks, the bump outs, and the roundabouts. Citations went from the 14,580 the previous year to just 12,543. So we know that our streets and our designs are helping to improve the flow of traffic, but also helping to save lives. So what we also know is that we can't just depend on law enforcement alone. It takes a collective. I've authored bills in the past that give police more tools to stop reckless driving, but these tools alone are not enough. Complete streets with elements like sidewalks, the raised mediums, and hybrid signals reduce pedestrian injuries and fatalities by up to 88%, and that's respectively. So speed humps alone lead to 20% fewer overall crashes. Harder center lines reduce crashes by 24%, and roundabouts reduce collision and injuries by 78%, and overall collisions are reduced by 48%. On the drive here, I took 51st Street, and so we passed 51st and Center. On the night of that crash that took the life of Hassan Harris and injured his brother, I live just about 3 blocks away from where that happened, 3 to 4 blocks away. And we heard sirens going off consistently from every direction. We could see the speeding police officers racing to the scene of the incident, and one of my neighbors was going to Dairy Queen, and she said that she was afraid to drive because sirens were just coming from everywhere. It was a police chase. Another neighbor came out, and he was on his way to pick up his son, and he said that he was really nervous about taking that drive because he was afraid of getting involved in a crash-related accident, which makes sense. But he also has a 17-year-old that just got his license last year, and he was concerned about his son driving. We know that reckless driving has decreased by 5%, but we also know that perception matters. Reality matters. And it doesn't matter if these numbers are being reduced if people are feeling these injuries all across the state every time a reckless driver occurs. Now, when we passed by that memoriam, we saw just a stack of balloons. So we know that Hussein and his brother, they were loved. People felt the repercussions of that accident. This is not just a Milwaukee issue. We know that reckless driving occurs all across this state. But we also know that because of the city of Milwaukee's population, we see a higher percentage of those deaths and those crashes right here in Milwaukee County. No one deserves to drive past a memorial where an innocent life was taken, simply trying to make it home or make it to run whatever errands they were out doing. We know more has to be done. We know that our residents deserve to be safe in their communities, and everyone deserves to drive down safe streets, especially in residential neighborhoods. So it's my hope that when this bill is introduced just a little bit later today, that it will get traction from my Republican colleagues across the aisle. Because no one deserves to lose their lives because of the poor decisions and judgments that are made by these reckless drivers. All of our hardworking neighbors deserve to safely make it home. And with that being said, we'll open it up for any questions, and I'll turn it back over to Representative Moore-Amakunde.
Thank you, Senator.
So $60 million is a large investment. I know you mentioned statistics from New York City. I mean, do we know that these things are working in Milwaukee?
We do know that these things are working in Milwaukee. As the senator pointed out, the reduction, 5% reduction, a lot of that is due to some of the federal dollars that we received to deal with traffic calming in the city of Milwaukee. So we do know that it has had an effect, and what we want to do is have a greater effect, and not just here in the city of Milwaukee, throughout the state of Wisconsin as well.
And we know that if additional funding was available, we could do more to improve more streets. We could narrow some of these lanes so they aren't being used as raceways to make sure that residents are kept safe. But again, it's about the money and to make sure that the funding is being spent where it needs to be. Let's be honest, I talk about this all the time. We're spending roughly $1 million at Lincoln Hills and Copper Lake per juvenile offender per year, $1 million to rehabilitate our children. $60 million would not be an issue for us to get that money, to have it allocated all across the state to make sure that our neighborhoods are kept safe.
Why do you attribute that 5% reduction to traffic calming improvements?
So what we know is that it's not just the efforts of police officers alone. We do know that a lot of the streets that have had the most problems have received bump outs, concrete bump outs. Some of our neighborhoods have received roundabouts. And we have started to implement the steps necessary to make sure that in some communities, people can no longer pass on the right sides, which is extremely important when you want to keep these or make these neighborhoods more safer. So I would say that it's not just a combination of the street calming measures, it's a combination of the street calming measures, our law enforcement, and people just being made more aware that reckless drivers are being cracked down on. You are always going to have those rare instances like we saw on Saturday that result in the loss of life, and one life is too much to be lost at the consequence of somebody that's making a poor judgment or deciding to flee police.
Also, when you have streets like Appleton and Lisbon and Capitol Drive and Fond du Lac, some of which are actually state highways, when they come into the city, we can't have them operating like freeways in the city, and we need to make sure that they are operating like streets, just as any other would, so we can slow down the traffic and actually change the culture of driving by slowing down the traffic, because you're not on 175 anymore. You're not on 94. You're not on 43. You're actually in a neighborhood where people live and play and work. And so a lot of this is that one aspect or that one facet of the multiple E's that I spoke about that we can help to curb reckless driving.
A lot of police chases start with reckless driving. Do you feel it's time to change MPD's chase policy?
I think that's a city policy question that our folks at the city would have to answer. We're here talking about another aspect of the E's, the engineering aspect. And like I said before, we have to put all of these together. We can't police our way out of this problem. We can't put it all on law enforcement. They need help. They need assistance. There are different things that can help solve the problem. But to answer your question, that's primarily a city of Milwaukee policy.
Okay, now this is Senator LaTanya Johnson. I won't get Supreme in trouble. But I am going to say yes. Yes, I think we need to have conversations because Milwaukee is a highly populated city. And by all means, if there are individuals out there like Saturday, they were chasing an individual that was a shooting suspect, and sometimes chases are necessary. But when you start to see the types of casualties that we're seeing, by all means, we need to sit down, we need to reevaluate some of those decisions, and we need to make decisions going forward that would be in the best interest of all residents. Because when you see, like a couple of months ago, a mom lost her life, and she was a mother of 10. Where do those children go? Who's going to be responsible for raising those babies? We have to make better decisions, and this is not the fault of law enforcement, right? Their job is to protect the overall safety of the community. But I think we need to take a look at some things and reevaluate, and making sure that what we're doing is resulting in the least loss of life as possible. And these chases are most definitely starting to be more deadly, and more innocent people are starting to be caught up in the midst.
Do you give this bill a better chance of passing than the red light legislation? Red light camera legislation?
This is a both-and situation. I think, like I talked about, the multifacetedness of the legislation. We have different approaches, and we're going to make sure we're doing all that's possible to make sure that we're doing right by the people of the 17th Assembly District, 6th Senate District, and all throughout the state of Wisconsin. And so I'm looking forward to Republican colleagues joining on this bill. There have been others who have introduced bills on the Assembly floor. They said, oh, those are great ideas that we heard from the other side of the aisle. I'm willing to do some of those. Well, here's your opportunity. And I think that there are those who are our Republican colleagues who are definitely sincere about their desire to curb this problem and to tackle this challenge. And so I look forward to the dialogue, and I look forward to them, jumping on this bill.
And I'll say, with the red light bill, the primary concern that we heard from our colleagues across the aisle was Big Brother, right? The primary concern that we hear when it comes to funding good legislation like this is the cost. The red light bill is an opportunity for us to pay for some of the cost. At any moment, any one of us could be a reckless driver. If we accidentally run a red light, if we're busy, if we run a red light, then we are a reckless driver at that time. But for the vast majority of us, that's not common practice. That's not what we do. But one way to make us check our behavior is through our pocketbooks. And having to pay for those citations, having to be reminded that, there are cameras that are going to catch you if you run through a red light. Any mechanism that we can use to make our streets safer, but on the other side, collect a couple of dollars to do that, benefits this city. I'm hopeful that this legislation will make it a lot farther than the red light bill that I introduced. But we also want to make it clear that this is money that can be tapped into, not just from the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County, but all across this state. And we know that reckless driving exists all across the state.
I want to get your thoughts. There was another school shooting in Minneapolis today. Reports potentially 20 victims. The suspect is dead. This is a private school in Minneapolis. Your thoughts and anything that you think we should do in Wisconsin to protect all of our students, whether they're public, private, or each other?
Well, there are multiple conversations that we've had about guns in school and keeping guns away from those who don't need to have them. And we can't answer things with just thoughts and prayers. We have to have real policy that goes into motion that can help prevent gun violence by folks not having access to the firearms in the first place. I don't know all the details, and I'm going to wait for more to come out. However, I know that myself and Senator Johnson, we have been on legislation, crafted legislation to talk about doing something beyond just those thoughts and prayers.
So gun violence is an issue that's near and dear to my heart for so many reasons. Every year in the state capitol during the month of June, which is Gun Violence Month, I bring life-size posters of children who have been killed all around the state from gun violence. And this last exhibit that we had more kids on those pictures in that rotunda than ever before. And one of the reasons that I do that is to give those children an opportunity to advocate for themselves. My colleagues don't have to listen to me or Representative Moore Amakunde, but allow those children to speak for themselves. There are a lot of things that we can do in this state to make sure that our children are not continued victims of gun violence, because we've had school shootings here. We had a school shooting last year, and our first session was to deal with voting issues, not the gun violence itself. We need to do more to make sure that that those guns do not fall into the hands of children and those that should not have them. For example, we have children that are ordering guns online, gun parts, as young as 12 years old, and it's legal. The companies that they're ordering from don't check IDs. They don't even make sure that these children are old enough to have these guns, because they are being sent as gun parts, and the guns are not complete until they're put together, and that's done through a YouTube video. These children have their hands on guns like Dracos, which are mini AK-47s. And they're doing this in this state, and we know, and we haven't done anything to stop that. I talk to the police union all the time. We hear from them all the time, especially on issues that are relating to police officers, such as pay. Well, when are they gonna start advocating for things like not allowing the overflow of guns to come into our communities? No one wants a person, a convicted felon with a gun. And harsher penalties, we can do that. But what are we doing about not allowing those instances to happen? We just had 2 police officers that were shot. And they were not the first officers that were shot in this state. What are we doing to make those guns not accessible? Every time the governor ever called a special session, we gavel in and we gavel out. I think it's safe to say that we are going to continue to see these instances, just like we're continuing to see them around the state, because we're not doing enough in prevention. And that's preventing those guns from flowing into the state in the first place.
Circling back to the bill, you were saying that reckless driving is an issue that is felt all across Wisconsin, but it seems like Milwaukee was given an emphasis. Will there be a priority in distributing funds specifically to Milwaukee County if the funds become available?
Well, I represent Milwaukee County, and I represent the city of Milwaukee. Like, none of my district is outside of the city of Milwaukee, so it will be my priority. Like I said before, these streets that run through my district, I don't need them to be operating like freeways. So when one gets off of 175 and turns onto Lisbon, I need them to know that they're no longer on 175, that they're actually on Lisbon Avenue. And I live right off of Lisbon on 59th Street. And so I need them to be operating and not cutting through my street, 59th Street, because they're escaping the freeway, and now they're still doing 35, 40 on my block because they've just gotten off of what they consider a freeway. And also, I want to make sure that we are respecting one another as well. This is an aspect of respecting one another as well, and not putting that pedal to the metal so you can be there in 12 minutes instead of 15. And making sure that you're respecting all the drivers on the road, any new drivers on the road, and you're respecting people's attentions, etc. It's a very stressful place to be in a car. As someone who drives back and forth to Madison, I can tell you, like, the times when I have an F-150 on my bumper, and they're trying to beckon me to do 90 like they're doing 90, and I just have to get over and let them be who they are. Or people who are just not aware. They're on their phones, or they are doing something else other than paying attention to the road. And we need to make sure that we are bringing that back together. And so we notice it all over the state of Wisconsin. I've driven as far as Eau Claire and driven up to places like Minnesota. So I've seen it all over the state of Wisconsin. However, I do represent the 17th Assembly District, and we need to make sure that I'm doing right by those who sent me to Madison.
Yeah, and we always fight for additional funding for the city of Milwaukee, but it will not be up to us as to how the funding gets distributed. So I think that that's the key. And the other thing that I want to say is that, yes, this is about safe neighborhoods and communities, right? Making sure that our kids can go outside and safely play on the streets. But this is also about economic development. I have had residents move out of my district because of public safety. And talking to those residents, especially our elderly residents whose homes are completely paid off, and they're choosing to sell their houses and move to other communities, in part due to gun violence and reckless driving. I had a gentleman tell me that, you know, it used to be that if you could get in your car and drive to your doctor's appointments and make it back before dark, you were safe. He said, but that's not the case anymore. And you know where he lives now? Germantown, after living in my district for over 33 years.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming today. We really appreciate it. If there's anything further, feel free to come on up to us. Thank you.
Yes, feel free. I'm sure I'll be in trouble for all those comments, but we